Good afternoon and welcome to the Saturday Sports Special, the weekend edition of TalkSports, where we speak with the movers and shakers of sports, the sportsmen and women and administrators as well, both past and present. Well, in the first segment of our program this afternoon, we'll be speaking with two officials of the Local Organizing Committee for the 2020, let's say 2021 CARIFTA Games, and their reaction to the decision to cancel the games scheduled for August. Well, then later we'll take a look at sports and COVID-19 and why it's important for national associations to become active campaigners in the vaccination program. But first, let me welcome to our program the chairperson of the 2021 CARIFTA Games Local Organizing Committee and also the president of the Bermuda National Athletic Association, Donna Raynor, and she's joined with the deputy chairperson, Mia Bean. They both joined us live from Hamilton, Bermuda. It has to be very warm, I believe. Well, I'm just assuming it's very warm. I'm seeing Mia's background, and it's just an assumption because you they will probably will tell us, But despite that, I want to welcome both ladies to our program. Good afternoon to you. Oh yes, I think I need to get your audio.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
How are you?
It's actually
I'm
not
fine.
hot here.
No, it's not hot.
It looks nice. It's not hot.
Oh, well, that's good to know. It's cool, I should say.
Yes.
Is that the better phrase to use?
That's a better
Yeah,
phrase.
it's nice
Right.
there. It's comfortable.
Right.
It's not hot.
Cool.
No.
Okay then. Well, ladies, thank you again for joining me. And about let's say about a week ago, not just a week. Yes, a week ago, last Thursday, the 6th of May to be exact, the president of NACAC, the North American, Central American and Caribbean Athletic Association, Mr. Mike Sands, he was on this program actually, and he basically providing an update on the CARIFTA Games. And he promised a decision was forthcoming. But then on Tuesday, let me first say, on Tuesday, I came across a letter which I believe was actually addressed to the NACAC family. But I selectively refused to publish, post, or make mention of it because I look at it as may have been, circulated in error, and I was awaiting an official statement from NACAC or the Local Organizing Committee and, regarding the situation with the CARIFTA Games. Well, NACAC subsequently issued a statement. However, it was later reported that the LOC was surprised by the sequence of events and expressed disappointment with the announcement. But before I introduce you to start speaking on that issue, I will want our viewers to get ahead of the discussion by hearing what Mr. Mike Sands had to say, and then we'll have the ladies respond to it. What it is, can you tell us, Mike, regarding the CARIFTA Games, which was put off for last year and seems to be some bit of bother for 2021?
But Mike, I think the CARIFTA Game has been a bit of bother for all of us. I think we all are aware that the CARIFTA Game is perhaps the preeminent junior competition anywhere to be found in the world. I like to say that every child in the Caribbean that is a member of the CARIFTA family aspires to make his country's CARIFTA team. So we don't, because more often than not, sometimes that may be the only national team that youth may make. And so we do not take CARIFTA very, very lightly. I think CARIFTA has been one of the biggest contributors to our area's strength and development as it relates to the Caribbean. So we have been doing everything possible to ensure that the CARIFTA Games goes off, and there's nothing against anybody's control. We had an information session with all of our member federations, as I told you, that we normally do. And that's last week. We had 2 weeks ago, I think, we had an information session where Bermuda gave its report, and its report was based on the condition as it were in Bermuda at the point in time, and the members directly themselves were able to ask a number of questions to Bermuda. Bermuda then was given instructions or directive, if you will, to come back to the membership with certain information that was requested to give all of the members a level of comfort. Once we received those reports, we will then now have to be able to make a decision as to where we would go in terms of CARIFTA, because we as the council and the membership at large, right, there's a certain standard that we have with CARIFTA that we want to maintain. And again, to no one's fault, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to maintain the integrity of the games to the best of our ability under the circumstances that we all face in the world. So once we've been able to review Bermuda's report, the council will then meet and we'll make a decision. I can tell you that we will probably be able to tell you that within the next, by the end of the week, certainly by this coming weekend, Monday or Tuesday at the latest. We'll have to make a final decision on the position of the CARIFTA Games.
Okay, ladies, you heard it there from Mr. Mike Sands, the president. I want you now to give us an indication of what really transpired, since there was a level of confidence and certainty that the games will be held in August after all.
Well, Michael, I'm going to start and then I'm going to hand it over to Mia, because I think
Certainly.
it's important for the public to recognize the situation. Number one, and I don't have any hesitation in advising the public that I lost both of my parents through this period. I asked NACAC Council if they could hold off on making this decision while I was grieving my parents' loss. Number one, I did not understand why it was so critical that a decision for games that's being held in August had to be made at the beginning of May. At first, they wanted that decision to be made April the 30th. And I asked them, why do we have to make a decision so early when the games are being held in August? The second question that I said to them, or the second comment I made to them, at that point in time, Bermuda was in the midst of a peak of COVID numbers and COVID deaths in Bermuda. And I said, can we kind of ride this out and see where we get to? Because the government of Bermuda is not going to make a decision on the CARIFTA Games that were going to be held in August during a time when they were trying to contain a pandemic. The answer that I received back from NACAC was that CARIFTA is very important. They understand my situation, but CARIFTA is very important to them, and they needed to make a decision. So basically, I stepped back. Even with Mike Sands speaking about the meeting that was held, I was not able to attend it. My father had just passed on the Friday, and I informed them that I will not be able to attend the meeting on the Saturday. So from my standpoint is, where was the empathy? And I still do not understand why a decision had to be made so quickly with all that we had going on in Bermuda. My personal life and also, where Bermuda was concerned, asking the government to make a decision in the midst of a pandemic.
So yeah, well, I want to extend condolences to you and your family. Donna, on the passing of your parents, I knew it would have been probably very hard for you, very difficult, I should say, during that period, to lose your parents almost, back to back, So I want to extend condolences to you and family. Mia?
Yeah, the conversation did transpire in the way that Mike Sands indicated. However, during the meeting with the NACAC family, there was a few dates put out there. July 1st, June 1st, May 1st was the earliest, and that was the one that they went with. And when I told Donna, she did say exactly what she said. She's like, why do they need to know so quickly? And the conversation surrounded charter flights and other logistics on the end of the countries that had to attend. And having organized a charter myself before, I was like, I knew, I'm like, you can still make those arrangements with whatever time frame you have. So it was an interesting conversation, but nevertheless, Donna's correct. The government was not in a good position to make a decision of that magnitude at that time, when they are deep in the throes of managing the well-being and health of the entire country. And I think it was slightly insensitive for them to have the expectation of an answer for a meet that wasn't important in the grand scheme of things. When we're looking at life, we have to balance the two. So stepping away from our role as sport, we have to realize the government is in a very precarious position, and they have to make sure that where they want to get back to normal, they also have to maintain the safety of its occupants. And so, notwithstanding, we knew that CARIFTA wouldn't look how it has looked historically. And that was really the conversations that we had been having. What will it look like? How will we maintain safety of the athletes? Because these are people's children, regardless of CARIFTA or whatever, these are people's children, and you need to ensure that people's children are safe. So how would this look? What would we do? And those are the things that we were working for. But NACAC, for whatever reason, seemed like they were unwavering in their position of having a full CARIFTA Games with 600 athletes and officials, which in a country the size of Bermuda is a lot of people. That's a lot of people to manage. So, I mean, for any country really, but that's a lot of people to manage. So, the conversation surrounded how can we reduce the numbers? Is that an option? They were not willing to reduce the numbers with the position of not disenfranchising 50% of the CARIFTA athlete population, referring to the under 17 age group. Now, that is based on the country's, Bermuda, that is, regulation of, which would be implemented June 6th, of unvaccinated people will have to quarantine for 14 days at a government selected quarantine facility. And so that was something that the government could not budge on. However, we also are aware that Pfizer was going to be releasing their vaccine for ages 12 to 17. So now that created another opening for opportunity for more athletes to be able to participate. And the government was willing to work with the provision of those vaccines for athletes from other countries. So where the communication from NACAC gave the impression that Bermuda was in a position of being non-negotiable, where they were non-negotiable about their position, they were also providing solutions to those other countries who did not have the vaccine available to athletes, as well as the younger athletes that could have potentially had access to it as well.
Well, and it's important that you mention government in there, because the government has a critical role to play in that. So what has been the reaction of the Bermuda government to this cancellation?
The Bermuda government have not been pleased. It's very interesting that probably days prior to this announcement being made, we received correspondence from the government that said, they had a cabinet meeting and the government had made the decision that they would like to host the CARIFTA Games in Bermuda. So we received that correspondence, but they also said, as Mia stated, they weren't willing to waiver the vaccination, the border entry for vaccinated and unvaccinated. But as Mia also said, they also said that they would be willing to work with other countries to, basically assist in getting some of the athletes vaccinated. And then they also mentioned in that correspondence that they had just received word from, WHO that they were getting ready to approve the vaccination for 12 to 17-year-olds. And I don't want to repeat what Mia said, but the government was very, very disappointed. They felt that the letter that we received was very harsh, and they were surprised that we were not notified before the entire NACAC family.
Well, and it's sort of interesting that in the correspondence, they said that, the NACAC understands, to quote, the impact that another cancellation of our premier annual junior competition will have on our young athletes. Unfortunately, we have carefully taken all factors into consideration and are left with no option but to cancel the CARIFTA Games 2021. Are you of the impression that all the factors have been taken
No.
into consideration?
No, I don't think so. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I think, we could have sat around the table at a time when, I was able, and I'm not saying that this would have went on for long, because as you see, I'm having a conversation with you now. So we could have had a conversation, pretty soon, after that discussion, and even had all of the government officials sitting around the table and see if we could come up with a solution. As you said, this was a big decision that had to be made. We have sponsors. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these games. I mean, we were preparing for CARIFTA for the last 2.5 years. And again, I'll go back to the way that this was rolled out. They didn't even give us an opportunity to speak to our sponsors first, to speak to, persons that have purchased tickets, even, to just put a plan in place. When we rolled out the decision to postpone the games, I sat down with NACAC. Me and I sat down with NACAC, and we came up with a plan of how the road is out so that we can protect us, against the sponsors, at least giving the sponsors the opportunity to hear from us, not to read it in the newspaper, read it in the media. Even from a standpoint, our social media was bombarded, saying, oh, you need to take this down. These games have been canceled before we even received the information that the games have been canceled. I didn't know. Mia called me and said, Donna, have you seen your email yet? And I said, what? She said, the games have been canceled. And I was like, what? I mean, how could the LOC not be notified or involved in a decision as big as that when it affects us more than it affects anyone else? As I said, we've spent millions of dollars. We have thousands of dollars of paraphernalia, that we have purchased, that we cannot use anywhere else because it's CARIFTA branded. So how could you make a decision like that without consulting or talking to us first and just send a letter to the entire NACAC family? And the LOC is not even aware that you are canceling the games that they've been preparing for the last 2.5 years. I thought that, as Mia said, it was very insensitive.
Mhm. And what's about the whole issue of the claims that hotel beds and funds were issues as it relates to that?
I will let Mia answer that question because she was our accommodations person.
So I don't even know where they came with that from. I had contracted the same number of rooms that I had contracted for 2020 CARIFTA. So the conversation about more rooms tied around if any regulation was put in place to reduce the number of athletes per room. Now, if that was something that came into play, potentially we would have had that issue. However, the permanent secretary of health indicated that if we were maintaining a bubble for CARIFTA, which we were going to be doing, we did not have to change the accommodation, which is a quadruple occupancy, which is the common standard across CARIFTA. So we had the same number of rooms as 2020. We were told by the permanent secretary of health that we did not need to reduce the numbers in the room because they were all going to be in a bubble. So where they said we didn't have enough rooms, I don't, I think it's selective hearing. I'm not sure where they came up with that. Then where it comes to financing, the question was put to the Bermuda government: if there was a need for more funding, would they be in a position to give us more funding? And they said no. But we didn't need more funding and we hadn't asked for any more funding. So where that statement is true, it was taken out of context. We did not ask for funding. We didn't need funding. So you see where there's two particular issues were quoted in the reason for the cancellation of the games, but they were taken out of context. So we had insufficient rooms. Initially, we were in one hotel, which was the Southampton Princess, but with that hotel closing, we had to shift and we were between two hotels, which is not uncommon. There are times we've been to CARIFTA and it's been 3 and 4 hotels. So that was a non-issue. And both of them were within 15 minutes of the stadium. So that wasn't problematic at all. So I don't know.
And And Michael, what I would like to add to that is, I'm sure the public are aware, Bermuda was 3 weeks away from hosting CARIFTA Games last year before it got canceled because of COVID. There's no way financially we would not have been able to hold the games 3 weeks prior to the games being canceled. And the only increase that could have been in our budget was medical. Our government had stated to us that they will provide us with any necessary testing. All we had to provide was the resources. And I have been working with a medical person who was going to be our medical lead, and she was bringing on volunteers to assist us with the testing. So the government had advised us that they will provide us the testing kits for free. So there would be no increase in our medical. So as far as we were concerned, we had the funding, as Mia said, we had the funding because we had the funding available for 2020. As I said, it was no way 3 weeks prior to the games could we say, oh, we're going to need more money from government. Government had told us last year. They provided us with funds. Government also provided with funds for the track. Remember, we laid a brand new track. Government provided us money to assist us with the laying of a new track, and they also provided us with sponsorship. And they told us when we received that we will not be receiving any more money for government. So we already knew that we couldn't go to government and request more funds. If we did need more funds, we would probably have tried to reach out to more corporations versus reaching out to government, but it was not necessary. We had sufficient funding to host the games, and as Mia said, we had sufficient rooms to host the games.
Right. Well, it really appeared so, and I assume that the news really have not gone down well for the folks in the Caribbean who have been really looking forward, based on what has happened last year, which people probably may have would have accepted at the time, I would say. But you know, I assume that you folks would have been receiving lots of calls, messages, emails regarding this cancellation. How have you been processing that?
Well, as you said, we're disappointed, and I'm going to quote something that Mia said and Mike Sands said. You know, they didn't want to disenfranchise 50% of its athletes. What we're doing now, we have disenfranchised 100% of our athletes with not hosting the games. But one thing I will tell you, you know, we're not really feeling 100% defeated. You know, we as a BNAA board, you know, we're trying to come up with something, you know, that we can salvage. As I said, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of paraphernalia that has CARIFTA on it that we can't use for anything else. So, you know, we're trying to come up with some ideas, some solution, something where we can salvage something and also give the athletes something to look forward to. I don't know what, but we're sitting on it. We're racking our brains trying to see what we can do to salvage this, to make sure that our sponsors, you know, are okay, you know, with this, because if not, the sponsors come back to us and say, okay, we gave you $50,000. You did not have this event. We need to have our $50,000 back. This whole thing could put the Bermuda National Athletics Association in the red financially. And that was our concern. If we didn't handle this properly, which I don't think it was handled properly, this could totally affect the finances of the BNAA. I mean, as you know, we had several sponsors on board. If you go to our website, you'll see that we had so many sponsors that were on board. You know, for example, we had the podium. We had a sponsor specifically for the podium. We had medals. We had a sponsor specifically for the medals. So all of that was purchased. So now we're trying to scratch our heads and see if we can come up with a plan where we can salvage something so that these sponsors don't come back to us and say, I'm sorry, you didn't have the event. We need those funds back.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Mia, you have traveled throughout the Caribbean, especially with CARIFTA Games as manager of Team Bermuda and things like that. So you know, pretty much, well, both of you pretty much know about the CARIFTA Games and the whole CARIFTA Games family. I'm wondering how much of this cancellation, this whole process would, in terms of the relationship between the Bermuda National Athletic Association and NACAC.
I think that it's disappointing, and I think
Donna is
that
smiling.
it has definitely put a stain on the relationship.
Mhm.
And I think more so for Donna than anyone else, because Donna is far more involved with the NACAC council. I'm familiar with them, but I do not engage as frequently and as often as Donna does. I don't have the kind of relationship that she has. So not just from a professional federation to federation type relationship, I think personally, I think it's been fractured in some ways and will take some time. I think time is the only thing that's going to improve the relationship, because if nothing else, we felt like the relationship existed where we would be given consideration to communicate to our sponsors, because we knew that nobody's going to say that we did not have any inclination that a cancellation was possible. We always knew that it was possible because the pandemic was ever changing. There were so many unknowns, and we knew that a possibility existed. However, at the time that the communication went out, that was not what was on the table. So that's where I think the breakdown in the relationship comes. Like, did you want to cancel it and you didn't want us to disagree, so you just did it without telling us? I don't know, and we will never know some of the answers to these things. But obviously, from a professional capacity, we still need to work together because we still are part of NACA. However, there is definitely, I would say, a sour taste in our mouth at this point, because on the level of professionalism, that it was done in poor taste. It was done in poor taste, and it just didn't go over well. It's just, I've spoken to people from other countries who I know from traveling, and they were like, "Why'd they do it like that?" And the only answer I could give is, I don't know. I don't know why they would do that. So knowing that the kind of money we spend, and unfortunately, the one thing that also resonates for us as well, as far as not just wanting to use the stuff that we have, is to give these athletes an opportunity. Some of them haven't competed internationally in over a year, and they start to lose motivation, they start to feel discouraged, and we want to provide an opportunity for these athletes to compete, so they can put to the test the training that they're doing, so they can see where they are, and so they can get those opportunities. And we felt that even if we were only hosting the under 20 age group, that it would have at least given them that opportunity to be seen by the college coaches, because as you know, college coaches are a significant part of the CARIFTA experience. You get scouted, you get seen by coaches, and we all know you don't even have to win CARIFTA for a coach to offer you an opportunity. And I think that is what's sad. And this is 2 years running now. 2 years in a row, athletes have missed an opportunity to showcase their skill, to showcase their talent. And I think it's sad, it's disheartening, and I feel for the athletes more than anybody, because money can be made, but opportunities lost are often difficult to replace.
Yeah, well, and Donna, I know it's more dear to you as I realize Mia is trying to throw the book at you, but your relationship with them, and when I say them, sorry, I refer to NACAC, because you have been involved and intimately involved in NACAC, intimately involved in track and field, not just in the Caribbean, but also at the level of World Athletics, Commonwealth, all these sort of things. So, you know, I'm trying to figure out how it is, what sort of thought pattern you have, in thinking about all that has been going through, and how do you relate to these? How do you relate to this situation and relate also to your counterparts?
Yeah. Well, for me, and as Mia stated too, it's going to take some time, because remember, I not only had the the CARIFTA, but on top of that, I had my personal situation that I was dealing with, and I think I said at the beginning, I kind of expected some empathy, because as you said, I've had a wonderful relationship with these people, as part of NACAC. And it's not like I lost one parent, I lost two within 4 days. So for them to be applying pressure to me, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I could tell you the day that my father passed, my phone was ringing off the hook, and not from people offering condolences, but from the media wanting to talk to me about CARIFTA Games. What is Bermuda's decision going to be? And I called NACAC and I said, I can't believe this. Today my father's passed, and I've had phone calls all day from the media wanting me to say to them what decision is Bermuda going to make regarding the CARIFTA Games. And so that part for me was very disappointing. It's also disappointing the way that the decision was handled. As I said, I mean, I used to talk to Mike Sands and Keith nearly on a daily basis about CARIFTA. Again, as you know, we postponed CARIFTA twice. Both times we sat down and we worked out a plan, because they said to me, Donna, I understand you have sponsors, that you need to contact, blah, 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 blah. So we worked out a plan of, okay, let's roll this out so that it doesn't affect Bermuda. It doesn't affect Bermuda National Athletics Association. And then here we are making a decision as big as cancellation. And we were not involved in that decision. We were not involved in putting together a plan to make sure, that we're not affected. So to a certain extent, and as long as I've had a relationship with all these guys, as you know, I was a member of the NACAC Council. I'm now chairperson of the NACAC Gender Leadership Working Group. I'm also member of World Athletics on the Development Commission and some of the committees. And it's like, so what happened to the respect to Donna? Maybe I thought I had a better relationship than I do have. I just feel very kind of disrespected that a decision as important as that, I was left out of it, or not just I, but the B. And I don't want to just say I, because I think the LOC, and I mean Mia and myself met with this, with those guys on a pretty regular basis, and all of a sudden a decision as important as this, we were not even considered in the discussion. I don't know who discussed it, because I know there was a council meeting after. So I'm assuming that the council members were part of this decision. I'm hoping, to a certain extent, that they were a part of making this decision. But I just can't believe that we were not contacted to say this is the decision that we're going to make. Yes, Mike Sands asked us to send a report, and I'll tell you, I responded and I said to the NACAC Council, I'm going to make a last ditch effort to see if we can come up with a decision. As Mia said, this is about the athletes, and that's what I said in my email response. This is not about politics. This is not about money. This is about the athletes. We had 19-year-olds who missed their opportunity for their last CARIFTA last year. We now have another batch of 19-year-olds that again have missed their last CARIFTA, plus their last possibly chance at getting an athletic scholarship. So that was the letter that I sent to NACAC, basically saying, can we sit down and discuss this before a decision is made? I got no response to that email. And the next response that I received was that not came to us directly, but went to the entire NACAC family, was that the games are canceled. So no one even responded to my email to say, well, Donna, thank you for your email. We've looked at, everything that you have suggested. I talked about how the government was willing to assist with vaccinations. I put all of that in my response, and I got no response back. And the next correspondence I got was that the CARIFTA Games are canceled. So yes, I do feel I'm disappointed, and I also feel to a certain extent disrespected because of the way that it was rolled out. I think we should have had much more involvement. I think they should have responded to my email, and they could have said in that email, we've looked at everything you've said, but we're going to cancel anyway. But we did. I got no response to that email at all, and my next response was, NACAC has canceled the CARIFTA Games.
I know, ladies, that we're short of time because you are sort of busy today. But you know, the CARIFTA Games was seen as very crucial for the CARIFTA family in terms of their preparation for the World Athletics on the 20 championships in Nairobi coming up in August. So you know, I well, I know you're not part of the technical aspect of it, but I assuming that member federations would have been looking forward to the, for the CARIFTA Games, for their qualification, for their athletes' qualification. I know for a fact there were a number of athletes from my native country of Grenada who in North America that was actually looking forward to the CARIFTA Games, not just looking for the CARIFTA Games, but it would have been their final year of participation in the CARIFTA Games. There will never be a CARIFTA Games for them again.
Exactly.
That's the and I think that was the speaking to some parents as well. They were so disappointed because they really thought that there would have been an opportunity to salvage at least something, just as how we have the boys and girls champs going on in Jamaica at this time as we speak. And other athletic championships. So, what has been the sort of feedback from the public in Bermuda as well?
The public in Bermuda are very upset about it. They are very upset. As you know, me and I did an interview this week, with one of our news media, and he said when that went out that the games were canceled, they said they had so many comments that came in. People were shocked because everyone in Bermuda knew that we were ready. And that's one thing that I want to let the public know. We were ready to host the games. There was nothing that I think could have stopped us. And as I said, with the medical, with all of the protocol, the COVID protocol that had been in place, we were working with government for the last 2 months to put together a protocol document. They sent us, whatever was happening, and we included it in the protocol document. And as I said, government were working with us to make sure that we were going to have a safe CARIFTA Games. So I don't want anyone in the public to think that Bermuda was not ready. We were ready. As I said, we were 3 weeks away from hosting the game. So it's no way that we could say, oh, we still had this to do. We had everything covered. We had all of our contacts for transportation. As Mia said, we were getting ready to sign the contract for the hotels. So I don't want anyone to go away saying, oh, well, they pulled the games because Bermuda was not ready. We definitely were ready. We were ready in 2020 and we were ready in 2021. And we were looking to put on a spectacular event. Believe me, if you see all that we have, and we just went to the office a couple of days ago and took pictures of every single thing that we have sitting in the office. This was going to be a games that everyone would have remembered. And we were going to make sure of that. So I just want everyone to know that we were ready to host these games, and the country is disappointed that it has been pulled out from under us. It's not like we said to them, we don't think we could do this. They told us we're canceling the games without us even having a whole lot of input. So, from our standpoint, again, it's disappointing. From Bermuda's standpoint, it's disappointing. From the government of Bermuda standpoint, it's disappointing.
Okay. Folks, you may see this year, and you may be wondering, well, Bermuda has been an integral part of the CARIFTA Games family. We know that many track and field stars have fond memories of Bermuda. Not the least is Usain Bolt back in 2004 when he established a world junior record, I should say, world junior record, 19.93, legal 1.4 win, and that was in Bermuda in 2004. So Bermuda really has a very rich tradition of, welcoming and the stars. I would say a lot of stars have found their footsteps in Bermuda. In fact, I can make claim to that because it was my actual photo that the IWF has been using. Yeah, it was a photo I took. I was at the games there, but it's just to show that the tradition and the rich history of track and field and CARIFTA in particular And Bermuda has hosted over the years, 1980, 2004, and just go on years after, well, championships after championship they have hosted, and successfully hosted as well. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the viewers. Ladies, any parting words from you, Mia?
No, not really. Bermuda, we're down, but we're not out. We're definitely gonna be putting our heads together to put something together. So I'm just encouraging people to keep their ears to the ground. They'll be hearing from us soon.
Yeah, and Donna, in particular, from the Bermuda National Athletic Association point of view, in terms of the athletes and your athletes' preparation for, the junior season. And I know, and by the way, we also know that normally the coaches from the US in particular will come through to the CARIFTA Games or look, whether it's streaming, whatever, but they have interest in the CARIFTA Games. So a lot was really at stake, but at home in terms of Bermuda, how was the action plan for the athletes?
Well, the action plan for the athletes is that we keep going. As Mia said, we're hoping to come up with something. We're hoping that if we come up with something, or when we come up something, that we can have NACAC on board. We do have our own national championships, that every country has to host. My thing is that, as and Mia said this earlier, we knew there could be a possibility, because of COVID, that the games could be canceled or whatever. And in reality, that was the only thing that we ever thought about was, oh my God, if we have another spike, in the pandemic, then that could possibly cancel the games. And that, in reality, in our mind, was all we thought about was, man, we've had a spike. Hopefully, everyone does what they're supposed to do so that, we can get to August, have these games, and, we can be happy, and we knew it was going to be successful. But as far as our athletes are concerned, we've got to do whatever we can to keep our athletes involved in the sport. Football is continuing with their international competition. Cricket are possibly looking at starting, very soon, the cricket. So, we can have athletes that could say, you know what, I'm going to go to a sport where I know, I'm going to be able to play soccer, or I know I'm going to be able to play cricket, or some other sport, versus, I'm in athletics. I've trained for 2 years for an event, and now this event is canceled again. Maybe I go to another sport, and we're hoping that we don't lose athletes like that, but there is a possibility. I mean, they have to have something to shoot for. So we're going to try our best to have something in place to keep these athletes motivated. But I know, as me being a prior athlete, you have to have something to shoot for. You can't just train day in and day out and have nothing, ahead of you. And, your coach is trying to motivate you and say, just keep training, just keep training. It's got to be something. It's got to be a goal. It's got to be an objective. And, not every athlete's objective or goal is the Olympics. Some athletes' goal is just the CARIFTA Games, to compete in the CARIFTA Games. Now we've taken that away from some of the athletes. So our goal as the Bermuda National Athletics Association is to try to keep our athletes motivated however we can, especially the young athletes, because that's the age group that we lose our athletes to. The athletes from 14, 16, 17, 18, that's when we have a struggle. I mean, we have a very, very great young persons program. We have a couple of clubs that have young athletes, and they stay in the program. But once they hit 14 to 18, 19, that's when we lose our athletes, and especially females.
Mm-hmm.
So now, we've taken away something that they were working towards twice. So now what do we do to motivate them? As I said, we're going to try our best to see what we can put together. But as Mia said, stay tuned. We're really thinking out of the box. We're trying to be innovative, but we need to have, government, and we need to have NACAC on board with our innovation. So hopefully, we'll be able to say something positive in the next couple of weeks. But we're trying. We as Mia said, we just cannot be defeated. We've got to see how we can salvage this season, for our athletes, for our Caribbean athletes, across the board. But we've got to have people that are going to jump on board with us and go with us and not put more hurdles in our way.
All right. Let me just say a comment there. Athletic meets are taking place all over the world at present. The sensitivity of protocols, prudence, and preparations could have made the CARIFTA Games possible. Thank you, Claire, for your comment.
Exactly.
People they are of the belief that it's possible, and as you said, could have been some level of discussion, some level of compromise, and it's something that was willing on the part of Bermuda, the LOC, the government, despite the protocols.
And I mean, you could look at Michael. You could look at the World Relays. They had the World Relays,
yeah,
and I'm sure they had a lot of challenges. But what I try to say is, if a government puts protocols in place, you as a sporting event cannot overwrite the government's protocols. But you can sit down and work out something to say, you know what, we want to have something. Let's have something versus having nothing at all. And as I said, they talked about disenfranchising 50%. We've now disenfranchised 100% of the athletes. And I am of the opinion that we could have come up with something. And as I said, I looked at World Athletics. Look at the relays, how few teams end up competing. And I'm sure that's not what they wanted, but countries had to make a decision. We will go or we will not go. But they had the event. There's so many events happening around the world that are nothing like what I'm sure they wanted them. You see events with no spectators, but the athletes are able to compete, and that's what we're all about, giving our athletes competition.
Yeah, I agree with you, because after my program, I have the Big 12 championships to look at. There's a lot of track and field in the US.
Exactly.
A number of
happening.
Yeah, a number of our Caribbean athletes, some of those who are competing, some of those who are actually looking forward to the CARIFTA Games, they will be competing. So I want to thank you, ladies, for being part of the program. Stay strong. Once again, Donna, our condolences to you and family. And, I listened to the interview you had with Burgess, right?
Numbers.
Yeah, and I was taken aback by the I some of the comments, and I know how some of the folks were very upset, to the fact that one asks you who or what is NACAC, and you had to explain to them, well, the NACAC, and I guess as much as, people were very, very upset about losing the CARIFTA Games. Thank you very much once again, ladies. I want to thank you for being part of the program.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
once,
you for
Michael.
having us.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Then.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Yeah, same to you. Okay then, folks, it's that was Donna and Mia Bean and Donna Raynor from the Local Organizing Committee that's in Bermuda for the CARIFTA Games 2021. As you heard, that the CARIFTA Games is being officially cancelled. It was announced by NACAC on Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, that the game has been cancelled. Have been cancelled.